tubal factors causing infertility, or tubal patency tests, or ovarian factors for infertility. Like that, each subdivision of female infertility you may get as a 4 marks question, or you may get an essay on female infertility itself. And ART is also a most repeated question, artificial reproductive techniques. Uh, so female infertility contributes to 30% of the cases of total infertility. And both male and female factors, combined factors, will be present in 20% of the cases. So whenever you are investigating a case of infertility, both the partners must be investigated simultaneously, and you have to give counseling first to both wife and husband separately, then together and with the family members also. So causes of female infertility can be, it may be from, it may be due to dyspareunia, severe pain during intercourse, or vaginismus. This itself may lead to female infertility. So because of coital difficulty, she is unable to conceive. Then congenital defects in the genital tract, like tight fibrous hymen, or transverse vaginal septum, or sometimes congenital cervical stenosis, or uterine abnormalities, they may result in female infertility. Then genital tract infections, cervical factors, uterine factors, tubal factors, and ovulatory dysfunction. Then peritoneal causes like peritubal adhesions and endometriosis. Chronic illnesses like tuberculosis and others, endocrinopathies like pituitary gland dysfunctions, hyperprolactinemias, hypothyroidism, and hypothalamic disorders. So these are the 10 causes of female infertility. We will discuss each in detail. So you can see here, this is the vaginal septum. This is the vaginal septum, which is the cause for infertility. Then prevalence of causes of female infertility. The most common cause of female infertility is ovarian factors, contributing to 30 to 40% of the cases. Next is the tubal factors, contributing to 25 to 30% of the cases. Then uterine causes 10%, cervical factors 5%, pelvic factors like endometriosis and peritubal adhesions 5%, and unexplained in 15% of the cases. Though you investigate the case completely, we are unable to find the cause in 15% of the cases. So you can remember, like, ovarian is most common, then tubal, then uterine causes, then cervical causes, and pelvic causes. So cervical causes 5%, uterine causes 15%, tubal factors 25%, ovarian factors 40%, peritoneal causes 10%. So whenever you are investigating a case of infertility, history taking is very important. You have to ask about the coital history, that is frequency of intercourse, any coital difficulties, and also importance of the ovulatory time, that is fertile period, whether they know or not, you have to ask about. Then menstrual history, any irregular menstrual cycles are there, whether it is regular or not, any dysmenorrhea is there. Ovulatory cycles will have dysmenorrhea, and whenever the patient says she is not having dysmenorrhea and she is having irregular cycles, it may be due to anovulation. Then surgical history, any previous history of abdominal and pelvic surgeries, which may lead to pelvic adhesions and infertility. Any history of weight changes, excessive weight gain seen in hypothyroidism and adrenal tumors, and loss of weight in hyperthyroidism. Hirsutism and acne, suggestive of polycystic ovarian disease. Any history of uses of any contraceptives, like patient might have used any IUCDs and she might have forgotten that, or sometimes because of IUCD infection, pelvic inflammatory diseases may have occurred. Then whenever you take the chance to take the cervical smear for cytology. Any previous history suggestive of sexually transmitted diseases like pus in the urine, white discharge, pain in the lower abdomen, or any swellings you have to ask. Galactoria, history of galactoria indicates hyperprolactinemia and thyroid symptoms like weight gain, excessive weight gain, cold intolerance, menstrual irregularities also you have to ask. Then obstetric history is very important. In the obstetric history, um, any history suggestive of endometritis. Body mass index recording is also important. Less than 19 or more than 30. Undernourished or morbid obesity. You have to examine for exophthalmos which is seen in hyperthyroidism, and if there is any epicanthus, lower implantation of ears and hairline, and webbed neck, they suggest you of Turner syndrome. Then neck examination of the neck for any thyroid swellings. Breast examination is a must in gynecological examination. You look for galactoria. And abdominal evaluation for any abnormal masses, and perspiculum examination to rule out the any infections, and also you take a chance to take the cervical smear. Sometimes we see cervical stenosis, that is pinhole os will be there, that may be the cause for infertility. So simple dilatation and DNC, after DNC the patient may conceive. In bimanual examination, you assess the size of the uterus, position of the uterus, and direction of the cervix, and presence of any uterine fibroids and adnexal masses, any tenderness and pelvic nodules. It is suggestive of pelvic nodules and tenderness. It is suggestive of endometriosis. Then assess for any defects like absence of vagina, uterus like vaginal septum, any congenital defects. Then if the patient is having cubitus valgus, it indicates chromosomal abnormalities. And dermatological evaluation like presence of acne and hirsutism, they suggestive of PCOD, hormonal imbalances. Coming to cervical factors, cervical stenosis like pinhole meatus or abnormalities of the mucus sperm interaction will occur. Then cervicitis itself leads to infertility, and presence of sperm antibodies in cervical mucus, it leads to infertility. So we do postcoital test to know the presence of cervical antibodies against the sperms. Postcoital test is a 2 marks question for you. In this, immediately after the intercourse, the patient is asked to report to gynec examination within half an hour, and you take the smear from the posterior fornix and you see under the microscope. So if you see jittery movements of the sperms, that indicates that there is antibodies against the sperms. Uterine factors like congenital uterine anomalies like septate uterus or malformed uterus, and acquired defects may be there, and fibroids will cause infertility, and uterine polyps, hypoplastic uterus, which is seen in Turner syndrome. Then tubal factors contribute to 25 to 30% of the cases of female infertility. So abnormalities are damage of the fallopian tubes, which may be congenital or acquired. Infections like sexually transmitted diseases like chlamydial infections and gonorrhea, they cause salpingitis, adhesions, and PID, pelvic inflammatory disease, and infertility. Any surgeries, like the patient might have operated for some appendectomy, that might have caused peritubal adhesions. That also interferes with tubal motility and causes infertility. So any previous history of surgery, abdominal surgery and pelvic surgery, it may lead to adhesions. Then congenital abnormalities like absent or maldeveloped tubes, And endometriosis, so presence of endometrial tissue outside the uterus, which may be endometriotic lesions may be seen on the tubes, which may interfere with the tubal function. Presence of hydrosalpinx and pyosalpinx indicates chronic PID. So peritoneal causes like peritubal adhesions, adnexal masses also interferes with fertility. So how to diagnose the tubal factors? So it depends upon the diagnosis of tubal patency. That is whether the tubes are patent or not, we have to know. No, but the tubal function, how to assess the tubal function? No test is currently available. So whatever we do the tests, these are to know the tubal patency only. That is whether the tube is patent or not, we know. But whether the functioning of the tube is normal or not, no tests are available. So what are the various tubal patency tests are available are Rubin's insufflation test. This, when we were students, we used to do this one. Rubin's cannula is inserted into the so a Rubin's cannula is inserted into the cervical canal and air is injected. So if the tubes are patent, there will be gurgling sounds in the iliac fossa. That is Rubin's insufflation test. It is a crude test. We are not doing nowadays. Then hysterosalpingogram to know the whether there is a spillage of the radio opaque dye through the tubes is there or not, we know. Then simple insufflation with pushing the 80 ml of air. Then chymography. Chymography is pressure monitoring, sir. Pressure monitoring, and we recorded the pressures on a graph. When the tubes are patent, there will be on increasing the pressure, there will be release of the, there will, if the tubes are patent, as the air enters into the peritoneal cavity, there will be fall in the pressures. That is Sherman's chymography. So tubal patency test, whenever you are asked, then you have to write the, for tubal patency, we do Rubin's insufflation test, hysterosalpingogram, simple insufflation with air, and Sherman's chymography. Other tests are also available. So here you can see, this is the laparoscopic view where the tubes are edematous, congested, and there is exudates over the surface. So this is indicates salpingitis. So tube is retort shaped, swelling is there, and this may be hydrosalpinx or pyosalpinx with pelvic adhesions. So this is the hysterosalpingogram where they have injected a radio opaque dye like urographene through the cannula, and they have taken films immediately and after 2 minutes. So there is spillage of the dye into the pit. You are seeing the retort shaped swellings. So this may be hydrosalpinx or pyosalpinx. So this is the list of tubal patency tests. You please note down all this one. So first one is Rubin's air insufflation test. Then hysterosalpingogram, chymography. Then SSG or sonosalpingography, otherwise known as SIS, that is saline infusion sonography. In saline infusion sonography, under ultrasound guidance, simultaneously we do the ultrasound and also you inject distilled water through the cervix and you see the fountain like spillage of air, spillage of the water through the fimbrial ends. That is sonosalpingography or saline infusion sonography. Then laparoscopic chromatubation. So under the laparoscope, you inspect through the laparoscope and you inject dye, methylene blue dye through the cervix into the uterine cavity. If the tubes are patent, we see the bluish dye coming out through the fimbrial ends. That is laparoscopic chromatubation. Hysteroscopy is direct visualization of the uterine cavity and the ostial end you can visualize. Then phalloposcopy is through the endoscope, a very very thin endoscope which is introduced into the fimbrial end, into the fallopian tube to inspect the mucosa of the fallopian tube. Then ampullary and fimbrial salpingoscopy is also endoscopes are used which are introduced through the fimbrial end to inspect the ampulla and the fimbria of the fallopian tube. Then fertiloscopy is also one type of endoscopy. Then hycoso, that is hysterosalpingo contrast sonography. HY is hysterosalpingo contrast sonography. So radio opaque dye is injected into the uterine cavity and we take the films. That is hycoso. So you please remember all these tubal patency tests. You may get a question. Discuss the tubal factors for female infertility and investigations of tubal patency and management. So Rubin's test is injection of carbon dioxide through the cervix, which may enter into the uterus, and then through the tubes, it will enter into the peritoneal cavity. When the tubes are patent, we see the gas will pass into the peritoneal cavity, and we hear the gurgling sounds in the abdomen. That is Rubin's test. Carbon dioxide is injected. Chymography is, it is an uterotubal insufflation test where a chymograph, that is pressure recordings, are recorded while injecting the carbon dioxide at a controlled rate. When the pressure changes occurs, it indicates tubal patency. So this is the Rubin's cannula or insufflation cannula. This end is introduced into the cervical canal and this will block the external cervical os, external os of the cervix. So there is no backward flow of the air. So air is injected, carbon dioxide is injected through here. Then hysterosalpingogram is urographene is the contrast medium used, which is water soluble, and because allergies are less common, allergies are more common with this urographene. Lipidol is 20 to 40% iodine in poppy seed oil, but it may produce granulomas. Advantages of hysterosalpingogram is it demonstrates the site of lesion. It gives the permanent picture. You can see the uterine cavity outline and also whether the tubes are patent or not, you can see. And any um, hydrosalpinx or pyosalpinx is there, or any adhesions are there, any kinking is there, you can see, you can take the film. That is the advantage, and it acts as a permanent record. You can diagnose the peritubal adhesions, kinking and distortion. The disadvantages with hysterosalpingogram is pain will be there, chances of local allergic reactions, foreign body granuloma, particularly with lipidol, and chances of infection and pelvic peritonitis. So what is the cannula used for HSG, hysterosalpingogram? So this is the cannula we use for hysterosalpingogram. It is called as Leach Wilkinson's cannula. Leach-Wilkinson's cannula. So this part, we screw it through the at the cervical canal, so it will go into the cervix. We screw it, then the dye is injected from here. So this is the film. You can see the uterine cavity outline. Any masses are there, you can identify. Here this is the fallopian tube, and you can clearly see the spillage of the radio opaque dye in the peritoneal cavity. So here both the tubes are patent. So this is the hysterosalpingogram film, where you can see there is one side there is no spillage. So one side tubal block is there, and another side spillage is there. So this is laparoscopic chromatubation. There, where through the laparoscope you are visualizing, and through the cervix they have injected methylene blue dye, and this is the fallopian tube. You can clearly see the bluish dye coming through the fimbrial end. So this is laparoscopic chromatubation test. So falloposcopy is to evaluate the tubal mucosa. It is an endoscope introduced transcervically, and the success rate of cannulation by falloposcopy in abnormal tubes of patients is more than 90%. What does it mean? If the patient is having any tubal abnormalities like adhesions, peritubal adhesions or intraluminal adhesions, there is chances of cannulation. That is, it will release those adhesions. So falloposcopy is the endoscope is introduced through the fallopian tube to study the tubal mucosa, and any adhesions are there, that will be released. So it is a micro endoscope to inspect the fallopian tubes. This is the fimbrial end, where they are introducing this endoscope through the fimbrial end. So mucosa, fallopian tube mucosa can be studied by falloposcopy. You please remember these names, falloposcopy. Any adhesions are there, you can note. So ampullary and fimbrial salpingoscopy is when these endoscopes are introduced through the fimbrial end. We call it as, to inspect the fallopian tube, we call it as ampullary or fimbrial salpingoscopy. So there is another term called fertiloscopy or transcervical transcervical hydrolaparoscopy, where now after putting this culdoscope, that is an endoscope is introduced through the posterior fornix, and a normal saline or distending medium is used, and you directly visualize the whether the whether the tubes are patent or not. We can see that is called as transvaginal hydrolaparoscopy. So through the culdoscope, that is an endoscope is passed through the posterior fornix, and we inject the normal saline through the cervix, and you can visualize the anatomy of the pelvic organs, and also the whether the water is coming through the fimbrial end or not. That is whether the tubes are patent or not, you can see. So fertiloscopy is when you use both culdoscopy and the falloposcopy, you use and hysteroscopy. We call it as fertiloscopy. Then after diagnosing the tubal factors like tubal adhesions, and how will you manage the tubal fertility? Tuboplasty, adhenolysis, in vitro fertilization, and FTC. FTC is forced tubal cannulation through the transcervical route under the hysteroscope. Tuboplasty is when tubal adhesions, when there is tubal adhesions are there, we do micro surgeries over the tube. So to relieve those constrictions, that is tuboplasty. It can be done by open method or through the laparoscopic method also you can do. Adhesiolysis is any simple peritubal adhesions. The tube may be normal, but because of peritubal adhesions, infertility is there. Then simple adhesiolysis also will cure this condition. This adhesiolysis can be done by through the laparoscope. If these fails and if it is tubal factors are contributing to infertility, the patient has to go for in vitro fertilization. When intraluminal adhesions are there within the fallopian tube, you advise FTC. Usually patient after tubectomy, if she comes for recanalization, so we do recanalization now. So after 3 months, we ask the patient to undergo hysterosalpingogram. So in the hysterosalpingogram, we don't see, if you don't see the spillage, then you send the patient for FTC. So they will pass this tube, a narrow tube through the cervix uterine cavity into the fallopian tube to know the patency of that. So this is called as FTC or post tubal cannulation. When the tubes, depending upon where the blockade is there, when the medial end of the tube is blocked by an amorphous plug or inflammatory exudate or tubal spasm, polyps, fibrosis by PID, endometriosis and ischemia nodosa. So in the hysterosalpingogram, if you see only the medial end is blocked, so you should think of some amorphous plug may be blocking the tube, or it may be an inflammatory exudate, or it may be simple tubal spasm due to pain during HSG, or a polyp may be there, or fibrosis by PID, endometriosis and ischemia nodosa. Then if the proximal and mid-tubal blockade is there, you suggest balloon tuboplasty to dilate that one, and you have to do tubal cannulation, or patient may go for tuboplasty, or if all this fails, she must go for in vitro fertilization. Lateral end block is there, we suggest fimbrioplasty, that is fimbrial end is also that must be repaired. Then salpingostomy and adhesiolysis for external adhesions. What is the difference between salpingectomy and salpingostomy? If any just you make a hole in that is called as salpingostomy. If you are excising, that is called as salpingectomy. So coming to uterine causes for female infertility. It may be due to hypoplastic uterus, which is seen in chromosomal abnormalities, malformed uterus, septate uterus, TB endometritis is one of the cause for uterine cause for infertility in developing countries, and intrauterine adhesions, massive intrauterine adhesions leading to Asherman syndrome, and uterine fibroids and endometrial polyps are the uterine causes of infertility. So what are the tests for uterine causes? So by ultrasound pelvis, preferably transvaginal sonogram, you can see any fibroids, polyps can be seen. Then by hysterosalpingogram, you can note the intrauterine abnormalities, like any septate uterus is there or malformed uterus is there, you can know. Hysteroscopy is by directly we can visualize the cavity of the uterus. Then saline infusion sonography, it differentiates the, it is particularly useful for diagnosis of endometrial polyps. So treatment of this is by operative hysteroscopy, you can do excision of the polyps, and also septoplasty can be done. Septal resection can be done. Any Asherman syndrome is there. So any intrauterine cavity adhesions are there, additional lysis can be done, and if any polyps or myomas are there, myomectomy can be done through the hysteroscope. So this is the picture where fibroids are there. So tomorrow we'll deal about these ovulatory factors and tests of ovulation. That is also a 10 marks question for you. Okay. In the next class, we'll deal about these ovulatory factors for female infertility and IVF, in vitro fertilization, and close this topic. So you write down 4 marks answer for tubal patency test and submit in your group. Okay. Thank you.